really, when we're talking about that, we're talking about two different issues. So there's the moisture problem. There's some sort of water intrusion going on, or humidity problem, but something having to do with moisture is getting to excess levels in the home, and that is triggering mold growth. Mold growth can begin to grow in as few as 24 hours after a water intrusion event, so it can come up pretty quickly. But also it's stuff that can occur over long periods of time with just not really noticing it. Typically, like with humidity issues, we see those where there's just excess humidity in the home that the home's not able to properly ventilate and manage. And over time, that causes an issue that just gets worse and worse and worse to the point where somebody finally notices it. Those can be some of the hardest ones to identify because, again, you just get used to your environment. You get that nose blindness and you just kind of get immune to it. So, immune to observing it, I should say. But going back to it, as far as practices and what should actually be done to resolve, well, first the water issue, that's going to be completely dependent on how is moisture getting in. And that's something that can be very complicated because there's a myriad of different issues. I mean, we see everything, very commonly we see a lot of foundation issues. So where people have water coming in from the exterior foundation, seeping in through their basement or crawl space, and then getting into the home. You can obviously have pipe leaks, any issues with your plumbing system, issues with your HVAC system, any sort of air conditioning is going to have condensate that's going to come off it. That needs to be properly managed and dealt with. If that's not, that can be a big source of mold. Really, anywhere that you have water introduced in your home, it can be a problem. And things like some of the most interesting and most challenging ones to identify are ones that are not based on actual water, but based on that humidity or airflow issues. So things having to do with insulation, improperly or aged windows where they're allowing a lot of air in, that can create some very interesting situations just depending on the environment on the outside of the home as you hit different temperature discrepancies. Right now I'm in Pittsburgh and it is 5 degrees Fahrenheit, which inside my house it is 70 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take. Humidity is very, very high inside the home compared to what it is on the outside. So just those temperature differentials have the potential to create significant issues. So there's a whole variety of different ways that we can have water problems that can create a mold issue. And depending on what those are, they'll need to be dealt with, obviously, very different ways. But that's something that a good mold professional should at least help identify. Why is the mold problem there in the first place, and what are the underlying water issues? Now, when it comes to resolving the mold problem itself, really there's a few core steps. Everybody's process is likely to be a little bit different, but there's a few core steps that are going to exist in any good remediation plan. The first one should always be containment. And this is really where we are isolating off the area that we're going to be working on, the area where the growth is, from the remainder of the property. So we're setting up plastic barriers with poly sheeting. We're making sure that everything is as airtight as we can get it. And same thing with any HVAC duct work. Want to make sure that's all isolated. And we're really trying to get that as contained off as we can, because during the next few steps, we're actually going to make the problem a bit worse before we make it better. And so we want to make sure the containment is as solid as we can get it. And then we're going to set up mechanical controls to help prevent cross-contamination as well. This is generally going to be air scrubbers or negative air machines to basically put the area that we're working on under negative pressure. And really what that does is no matter what kind of containment we do, it's never going to be 100% perfect. There's always likely to be some air leakage. But if we can isolate that area and put it under negative pressure, if there are any gaps in that containment, it's going to be pulling air from the untreated area into the area that we're working on, rather than moving air from the area that the working area out into the remainder of the home. So that's regardless of what we're doing, that should always be the first steps for any real removal project or mold remediation project. From there, it's going to come down to proper removal of the mold, which is going to depend very much on what surface it's growing on. So in most cases, it's going to be removing the building material. So whether it's drywall, sheetrock, insulation, carpeting, flooring, what have you. Almost always that material is going to need to be removed, with the exception of very non-porous materials can be cleaned typically. Because with a non-porous material, the mold's not actually growing into the material itself. It's growing on the dust, on the biofilm that accumulates on that material. So those typically can be cleaned, whereas your porous materials, your natural wood products, all that kind of stuff, most of that's going to be removed.
If you enjoyed this clip, press here for the full episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.